back, everyone, to OpenLine. We are talking about housing issues, and we have with us Zac Oswald, an attorney with the Legal Aid Society, and he's taking questions, which is great. I appreciate that. We have a lot of people calling in, so let's just get back to the phones. Let's go to Pat. Hello, Pat.
Yes, hi. So my take on this issue is that the problem of the homeless and the problem of housing instability with escalating rents, etc., is largely a problem of the poor and the ill. And those two groups are really not the constituency of the governor. So he does not put emphasis there. If he had, or if he did, he could solve the homeless problem quite soon. But unfortunately, until more of his constituents begin to suffer these problems, we'll just see more and more people becoming homeless because the rents are going to continue to go up. And the governor, you know, he's not concerned about these people because they're not his constituency. He could solve the problem if he wanted to, but unfortunately, he does not have the resolve to do so. And I don't know what else can be done until we get the attention of the governor.
Okay, Pat, thank you. Pat's calling out the governor. I mean, it's probably all politicians. I mean, for many politicians, the poor and the sick are not necessarily the constituents they're focused on. But what do you think about what Pat is saying there?
What I will say is that Pat is not wrong when she says that rents are going to continue to go up. And so we do need to be looking into this issue. Obviously, housing costs, particularly for homeowners, we've seen an incredible increase in the value of homes. And what that has done is, before, low-income people weren't able to access the homeowner market. But now, as homeowner values continue to rise up, middle-class people are not able to enter into the homeowner market, meaning that they're staying in the rental market. That's increasing supply, that's increasing demand without having an increased supply, which allows for these rents to be able to really increase. And so, yes, I could say housing needs to be built everywhere so that people can afford it. There needs to be a varying amount of market rate of workforce housing and low-income housing, but it's not going to fix itself overnight. We need to have everybody looking into this issue to see what we can do.
And put pressure on elected officials. Let's go to Ann. Hello, Ann.
Yes, good evening. First, I want to make a comment to correct Mr. Oswald on something. In 2020, during the moratorium, Metro Davidson County issued no less than 865 evictions. In 2021, during the moratorium, Davidson County issued no less than 928 evictions. I'm not sure what the statistics are right now, but I do know of one organization or nonprofit that has been assisting families since January 1st of this year to find housing due to evictions and other reasons due to homelessness. And the same group of people have been at the Metro Courthouse on various days of the week. And I know that on many occasions that legal aid would have been very beneficial. And I am 90% sure they've never been offered assistance. So my question was going to be, I missed the first 5 minutes, and what was your name, young man? But it's just been said by Ben, and that would be Zac Oswald. But I can assure you that evictions are taking place in Davidson County, and many of these are being done to mothers and children and families, and the homeless issue is affecting very many people and very many families and children.
All right,
and
Ann.
There are not options. So yes, legal aid needs to take a walk over to the courthouse and see who is being evicted and maybe reaching out and offering some services, it would be very beneficial.
All right. And well, you hear what Ann's saying, but she's saying people were evicted despite the moratorium, and she gave numbers. People were evicted, and is saying now the moratorium's over, people are obviously still being evicted.
I think it's important to note what the eviction moratorium actually covered, and I think that might be where the confusion is here. The CDC eviction moratorium specifically only prevented evictions for non-payment of rent, and those evictions weren't paused until the tenant filed a declaration with their landlord and the court. So there are absolutely circumstances where evictions would have moved forward either because the tenants didn't know that they had to file the declaration, and legal aid and various advocacy groups were at the courthouse making sure that they were being given out. In fact, I think that the Davidson County clerk was handing out these declarations to people as they were coming into court. And secondly, that non-payment of rent evictions aren't the only evictions that happen. People are being evicted because they broke their lease. People are being evicted because of behavioral issues and things like that. So absolutely, those evictions would have continued in court. I think she said 800 in 2020 and about 896. I believe in 2019, 12,000 evictions were filed. So if we're looking at those numbers, of course, stating it in the absolute would be incorrect. But there were protections that were available for tenants. I also want to note we have two fully dedicated attorneys to housing in Nashville who are in the courts tirelessly every day, particularly in Judge Bell's Legacy Court, which is an eviction diversion court, to help people who are behind on rent, to secure services that are available through emergency rental assistance funds from the federal government, and to not only allow the tenant to stay, but to make the landlord whole. We're paying the back rent that those tenants owe to the landlord. We're paying for the court costs and the attorney's fees to make sure that the landlords have also recuperated from COVID-19. And unless the tenants and the landlords are working together in that program, we're not going to be able to move forward from COVID-19 effectively.
That moratorium on evictions is over now, right?
It is over. It's been over since late July of last year.
So that's history.
Absolutely.
Now you can be evicted. You can't pay, you can be evicted. Nothing to do with COVID. You can be evicted, period. And that's, all right, so it's interesting what she said. There were hundreds of evictions despite that moratorium, but you go the year before that moratorium, you're saying there were many thousands of evictions. Mm-hmm. Okay, well that's all very interesting. All right, let's go to Daphne. Is that right? Daphne? Are you there?
Hi, thank you.
Hi, go right ahead.
Hi, I live in Hendersonville, and I moved into an apartment back in 2020, and I have noticed traces of mold in my shower. I emailed my apartment complex. They told me to treat it with bleach and water. Well, presently, they're doing renovations on the apartment complex, and I've noticed even more mold behind a fixture that fell off in the shower. And I just want to know what my rights are as a tenant. Like, it's kind of gross taking a shower with, like, so much mold around you. You kind of feel dirty. So, yeah, I was just wondering, what are my rights?
How old is this apartment?
I think it was built back in '84.
And are there lots of people living there? It's not a big apartment, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. All right. What about what she's saying?
So again, the first thing that I would refer Daphne to is to the Department of Tennessee Healthy Homes website to see what tips are available for Daphne to be able to get the mold out of her apartment herself. And I'm not blaming this on Daphne. I'm just saying the first step is going to be doing what we can on our own, and then let's talk to the landlord about it. Back to what her rights are, she said she was in Hendersonville, that's Sumner County, which is going to be the Uniform Residential Landlord-Tenant Act. And we know, again, specifically it says the landlord's responsibility is to keep it clean and safe, fit, and habitable. I'm going to encourage Daphne to write to her landlord. That way we've got a chain that shows this is the day I made this request, this was the request I made. We're going to give the landlord a reasonable amount of time to fix those things. And if the landlord doesn't fix those things in the amount of time, we've got two options. One is to file a lawsuit against the landlord in court to try and force him to make those repairs. That is a tall task because the tenant at that point has to prove that there's mold. They have to prove that it's the landlord's fault. and they have to prove that it needs to be fixed in order to make the place fit and habitable. Are we talking about toxic mold, or are we talking about artificial, just it looks gross sort of things? The other option is that Daphne could break her lease and move out because the landlord isn't keeping the place fit and habitable, safe and clean. But how are we going to do that in an environment where safe and affordable housing is at such a genuine limitation? Is it worth it for Daphne to stay where she is, or does she need to find another place, and can she afford it, and is it going to be safe and clean as well?
So she's got a tough thing there. That's a tough
Absolutely.
situation. Okay, that's interesting. So that kind of walks you through all the options, and that's tough, Daphne. I appreciate you calling in, because I bet there are a lot of people that have that same situation. Let's go to Ed. Hello, Ed.
Yes, I'm here.
Go right ahead. Whatever you want to say, Ed.
Yes. Yes, hello, everybody. My question is, you just mentioned that rent has increased and housing has increased since 2011. Why is there not anybody regulating the amount that they're able to raise the rent? And most of the time when you get a raise at work, it's only about 2 or 3%. And they're raising rent 14, 15, 16%. And it's hard on people, especially with these gas prices being high and the prices at the grocery store. So why is there nobody regulating how much they're able to raise your rent?
All right, thank you for that question. Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, median income in 2011 was $49,000. In 2020, it's $63,000. So an increase of 26%, but rents went up 83%.
Yep.
So you're not keeping up at all. And his question is, why is there not someone regulating the increases in rent?
So the quick answer to that is quite the inverse. There isn't anybody regulating the increase in rent because there's actually a state law that prohibits rent control. And so there is actually, in fact, a law that says we can't regulate what the increase in rent is. And that's why we're seeing that as a result of the market, that rent increases to go up. But what I would say to renters who are struggling to pay for their rent right now is to look for these COVID-19 rent relief programs that are available to you, to apply to them, and to follow through on the applications. Statewide, there is a rent relief program through THDA that allows people who are behind on rent or are falling behind on rent and have suffered some sort of incident or misstep from COVID-19, whether that is losing your job, having a reduction in income, having to stop working because you were taking care of your children, or not being able to pay rent for a few months or work for a few months because of a medical issue. They can apply for this rent relief program. It will pay arrearages, rent arrearages that people owe all the way back to March of 2020. And we'll even pay prospective rent as long as there's money in the system, up to 15 total months of rent, and we may even see that increase to 18 months of rent in the future. Additionally, it help with up to 12 months worth of utility arrearages as well. And so anybody that qualifies for that program, or anybody that thinks that they might qualify for that program, I really encourage them to apply. For renters outside of Davidson and Rutherford County, they would apply through THDA's website at thda.org. For renters that are in Davidson County, you want to call the Metro Action Commission at 615-862-7368. And for those renters in Rutherford County, you want to call the Rutherford County government at 615-334-4777 and apply for those. And if you have problems with the application, or if you get denied and you want somebody at legal aid to take a look at it, call our offices as well.
That's a ton of money. So the evictions, the moratorium on evictions is over. So that part of COVID is gone. But you're saying there's still a lot of money out there to help renters with when they're behind on their rent. COVID related, there's still a lot of money out there. Is that right?
There's a lot of money out there that is available, and that definition of COVID related is very loose. If you were impacted at all by COVID, and all of us were impacted at all by COVID at this point, then you're going to be able to say that you're eligible for this money. There are requirements. You have to be at 80% or below of the area median income. If you don't know whether or not you're there, go to the application, pick what county you're in, and it will list. If you're a household of 1, you need to make this amount or below. Household of 2, this amount of or below. And then again, most of the time the rent is going to be paid directly to your landlord. If your landlord won't participate, keep working with those programs. We are seeing that they're starting to pay money directly to tenants who then need to pay it to their landlords.
Right.
But it's helping people where the landlord may or may not be eligible to, or may not be interested in that program, to still get everybody the help that they need.
That's great. And you're right. Anybody can make an argument they were impacted by COVID.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll take a break. Come back. More calls right after this.